Hey, what's up guys, welcome back. Now in this video we're going to take a little closer look into what's going on with third parties, the Dark Souls situation for the Nintendo Switch, and the future outlook for the system as well. So with that, we'll get started. Now today wasn't a very good day for Nintendo fans and for gaming in general. There's a lot of bad news out there, bad stories going on, even Castlevania news of it going to iOS by Konami, which was terrible. I really didn't like that news at all. For one of my favorite gaming series of all time, going to the microtransaction world of smartphones. And I know quite a lot of you guys out there were screaming at the top of your lungs, going crazy with that news in anger, and no doubt I totally understand. That did not sit well for me. And of course, the news of Dark Souls Remastered being delayed for the Nintendo Switch, and the only version of the game being delayed for the Switch, didn't make me happy either, and I'm sure for you Nintendo fans out there, you were extremely disappointed that this game was delayed just a little bit over a month before release. They decided to delay it to an unknown date, and saying that it is now targeted for summertime 2018. Instead of releasing on May 25th like all the other versions of the game. Now, according to Bandai Namco's UK Twitter page, they said that the new release timing gives the dev team the time needed to make sure Nintendo Switch players can fully appreciate the true Dark Souls experience anytime and anywhere, thanks to the unique portable nature of the Nintendo Switch console. That is the only explanation they gave as to why the game is being delayed. They didn't give any other reason other than that. And this led many fans to be angry and to speculate that something was going on behind the scenes. They don't know why this is happening, why it's being delayed. It seemed like the game was running just fine at PAX East. If you recall, there was lots of gameplay footage of it, and the game was running really good. It ran smoothly. There was even reports of the game running smoother than the original Xbox 360 version in certain areas of the game that ran worse on that console back when the game was originally released. So Bandai Namco's official reason is purely on the development side from what they said. There's no other outside reasoning for this. They say that has nothing to do with another company paying them, or it has nothing to do with Nintendo. It's basically just on the development side of things that this game is being delayed. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened. If you recall, Battle Chasers was delayed quite extensively for about 6 months on the Nintendo Switch. Yooka-Laylee was delayed quite extensively for the Nintendo Switch, and that team was waiting on the Unity update to take place for them to have a better running version on the Nintendo Switch. So that took a long time for it to finally come out. So these delays are nothing new. However, this game was announced to be released day and date with the other consoles on May 25th. So this was a big blow to Nintendo fans and for Switch owners that were looking forward to this game. Because a lot of time what will happen is that these games get announced for the Switch, and then the developer will say that the Switch version is coming later, but they'll say it right up front that the game will not be released day and date with the other systems, and then we'll get the port. Just like with what happened with Wolfenstein 2, the game was announced before the game was released on Xbox One and PS4 and PC, but they said up front that the game wasn't coming in 2018, and then the game of course was released on all other systems in 2017. Now, during the first year of the Switch, it made sense that a lot of these ports came later because the system was just announced and it was brand new, and a lot of these newer games that were made for PS4 and Xbox One were in development for quite a few years before the system was even available to developers to make their games on. So a lot of that made more sense in 2017, but now we're almost at mid-2018 here. We're getting towards to the end of April, E3's coming, so by now we should be seeing more games that are day and date for their PS4 and Xbox One counterparts, the games at least that could be easier to run on the system. But now we're actually seeing hiccups in the planned announcements for when these games for the Switch are going to be done and released, and this was a big one with Dark Souls Remastered. So it may lead credence to believe that the Switch is not quite as easy to develop for certain games as one might have believed in the past. A lot of indie developers have had a great time with the Switch getting their games running on the system, but you have to take into account that a lot of these games are very simple and have a much smaller landscape than other games. But of course we have to mention that there's always the exception to the rule. We did see that demo of Ark Survival Evolved that looked really impressive on the Switch. Even though it wasn't running very well, obviously they wouldn't release it in that state. That was most likely just that area of the game, so that while that was impressive, who knows how long it's going to take for them to actually complete that game and get it released on the Switch. They said they got that demo up and running really fast on the system, so that remains to be seen. It's all up to the developer and what tools they have and what they can accomplish on the system. So it's a really interesting situation here for the Switch and third parties, because on the one hand, fans are really disappointed that the game is getting delayed on the Switch until a later date. There is no date set yet, so it's still summertime. But then on the other hand, fans are still happy that the game is still coming and it's not canceled. And then you have another set of fans that are very worried that since the game is missing its intended release date with the other systems, that the Switch version is going to have bad sales because of it, since the PS4, Xbox One, and PC versions of the game are going to be available on day one, and then the Switch version will come much later, which will no doubt affect sales. But then what you have to ask yourself is that if the developer were to release the Switch version of Dark Souls Remastered right now with the other versions, and it was running poorly, how would you feel about getting the game day and date if the game was running bad and had a bad frame rate? Say it was really bad in certain areas of the game, similar to WWE 2K18, where it ran at 10 frames per second, had all kinds of clipping and stuttering and freezing in certain areas of the game, and just wasn't up to snuff. Would you still be appreciative of having the game day and date, or would you want the game to be fully polished and ready to go when it's finally ready to be released later in the summertime on the Switch? Granted, the sales could be worse, but you will still be getting a better quality port. And really what we're getting down to is that this whole thing is a catch-22 situation. If you release the game right now with the other versions and it's running poorly, the game may suffer from worse sales because of that. If you release the game late and it has no performance issues and it runs great on the Switch, it still could have its sales affected greatly because of it releasing months later than the other versions. So either way, sales can be lost here no matter which way you look at it. The best case scenario in this situation would be to release the game day and date with the other systems and have no performance issues, and have it be a port that's on par with the other console versions, having that portable aspect of the Nintendo Switch ready to go, everything polished on day one. So this is another situation where Nintendo Switch owners are getting a game late, and when that happens, there's no real way for the third-party developer to gauge sales very well in terms of ports on how they sell on the Nintendo Switch console. Because when a game is released late, whether it's portable or not, the other systems have already got their version of the game, and a lot of those sales have already been eaten up by the core fans who really want to play that game on the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. They may not be willing to wait for the months later Switch version of the game. The same is probably going to happen with Dragon Quest XI, right? When that game finally does come out sometime way in the future, we really don't know. That game came out in 2017 already. The core fans have already bought that game and beaten the game, and they've already moved on, and they're looking forward to Dragon Quest XII, right? So this situation with third parties continues to be a problem with games coming late, or games getting delayed and not releasing day and date, missing features, so on and so forth. This has been going on since the GameCube days, really. With the GameCube, it was lacking online features and had the small storage space on the disc, leading eventually to third parties leaving the system and not releasing certain games on the GameCube. And then of course with the Nintendo Wii, the Wii was greatly underpowered compared to Xbox 360 and PS3, leading some games to miss the console completely, like the Mass Effect series, Resident Evil 5, and the Assassin's Creed series did not get ported to the Nintendo Wii. We're all familiar with what happened with the Wii U. The ports were late at launch, and they were missing features. When it all came down to it, people simply didn't buy those games on the Wii U, no matter which way you look at it. Now with the Switch, we don't have exact numbers really for some of these games. Some games have sold pretty well in the system that we know about, and some games we just don't have any information on at all yet. But history keeps repeating itself, and when you release games late, or when you delay games from when their original release date, it's never a good thing, and usually sales of those games are affected in a negative way that do impact the overall growth of the system and can affect it later on. So the question is, what can we do as fans to try to fix this situation on the Nintendo Switch, or is it even fixable at all? Is there anything we can do as fans to help this situation? Now, it could be a technical issue with the Nintendo Switch that we don't know about that is causing developers a little bit longer to make these ports run on the system. Maybe certain developers don't have all the same tools, or maybe they're having more difficulty porting certain engines or certain APIs they use for those engines to the Nintendo Switch that's causing development time to take longer. That is something we simply don't know about. The only two engines that we know run relatively well on the Switch is Unreal Engine 4 and Unity to a certain extent. These other engines that they're using for these games, we simply don't know exactly how well they run on the system and how much time they take to port over with their APIs to the Nintendo Switch, because we have to realize that the Switch is based on NVIDIA technology and PS4 and Xbox One are based on AMD. So the Switch not only has a different architecture from the PS4 and Xbox One, it also has a different CPU, which is an ARM processor versus the x86 from PS4 and Xbox One. So either way you look at it, whether it's power issue with the Switch being less powerful, or if you're looking at an architecture issue with the Switch being completely different architecture, either way it's going to take a longer amount of time to port these games over to the Switch. Now you would hope they could do it in a fast amount of time to get these games running acceptably on the Switch and release them day and date with the other consoles, but it looks like that is simply not happening for a lot of these games. And while yes, fans are excited they're still getting these games in the first place, it is definitely annoying to fans that we have to continually get these games later and later and later, and it's really sticking out like a sore thumb that this continues to happen generation after generation with Nintendo consoles. And the only thing we can do as fans is voice our opinions and speak out on these things so we can encourage Nintendo to provide these developers with better tools or whatever they need to make their ports an easier process to come over to the Switch, so they don't get their sales affected by coming so late to the system, where then third parties have no reason to really understand where the audience is on the system or who to gauge it towards, because they're not releasing their game day and date with the other developers. How can anyone really gauge how your game is going to do if the game has already been released on other consoles? It just becomes a really useless process to try to gauge what third-party games are going to sell in the system if those games are always late. You really will never know the truth on how these games are going to sell if you keep doing that. So this is something Nintendo has to fix. They have to get to the bottom of it. They have to fix it with these developers. They need to do whatever they can to make sure that this does not continue to happen. And we as fans need to continue to make our voices heard that we are not happy that these things keep happening with our Nintendo consoles. Because we all know that if we do work together on something as fans, we can make a big difference in this industry. We've seen it with EA, loot boxes, we've seen all these things. So if we do come together and continue to speak out on these things, things will eventually change. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit the like button. Let me know what you think in the comment section about everything we talked about here. Do you think this situation can be fixed with the Switch? Do you think we can get games day and date? What do you think Nintendo has to do to fix this situation and help third parties help us get the games when we should get the games like the other consoles do? Alright guys, thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.
When the big man was killed, you must have wanted it. Its blood was on the leaves.
If it bleeds, we can kill it.